We're joined now by ABC News political contributor Matthew Dowd, also David Frum, former speechwriter for President George W. Bush. And both you gentlemen did work for President Bush. But I want to get into some comments that David Frum made last week and get you to respond, Matthew Dowd. He came out at the end of the health care debate and said that the Republican Party followed the most radical voices in the party and the movement, and they led us to abject and irreversible defeat. Of course, that created quite an outcry inside the Republican Party. How do you respond to it, Matthew?
Well, it's interesting. I think what the Republican Party did was follow the majority of the country who stands against the health care bill as it was passed. I mean, the country right now, in the last polls that think the quality of health care is going to drop because of the bill, think the costs are going to go up because of the bill, they think Medicare is going to be weakened because of the bill, and they think the deficit's going to go up because of the bill. I think the problem is not that Barack Obama was unable to convince Republicans, but that he was unable to convince a majority of the country that they would be benefited by this bill.
And David, that's what a lot of Republicans believe, that there's no penalty to be paid for opposing President Obama's health care bill.
Well, look, I think the country and the Republicans are right about the consequences of this bill. It will grow the deficit. It will have all kinds of negative consequences. But it's also the law. And you could see in advance that this was a very powerful president with a big majority in Congress. And you had to play this very intelligently in order to avert these consequences. I think a lot of Republicans have been a lot more focused on regaining the House and Senate than they were focused on saving the country from the worst consequences of this bill. And you see it now with this talk of repeal. Repeal is literally impossible. You need the president's signature, which he won't get, or you have to override his signature with 2/3 of both houses, and it's mathematically impossible to win 2/3 of the Senate. This bill is going to lock into place. Republicans need to be focused on fixing its worst effects. We're not going to withdraw the promise of universal insurance coverage.
And Matthew, it does seem like some Republican leaders, they started out very strong on the ideal of repeal at the beginning of last week, now seem to be moving more towards what David's talking about. They're fixing, not repealing.
Well, I mean, David's right that you can't, with President Obama still in office, you're not going to be able to, no matter how many seats you win in November in the House or the Senate, you're not going to be able to override his veto. I think what the Republicans are trying to figure out is exactly what their messaging needs to be. I think for sure they need to talk about how bad this bill is because they are on the side of the American public on this. I also don't think there was any way the White House was ever going to really compromise with Republicans on this. They talked about it, but they never really did it. And so we can blame Republicans in Congress for not compromising. In the end, it's the president's responsibility and administration's responsibility, and they did not do what was necessary to sell the American public to put pressure on the Republicans on this.
David, Matthew talks about the message there. What about the messenger, Sarah Palin? It was kind of remarkable over the weekend. She does a rally for John McCain, and she is the star, even though he was the presidential candidate last time around. But look at these numbers from our latest Washington Post ABC poll. 55% of the country still have an unfavorable view of Sarah Palin. A majority still believes she's unqualified. How dangerous is it to the Republican Party to have her as the face, basically, of the GOP right now?
Well, it's not helpful, but it's not a messaging problem. In fact, I think one of the things that we, as Republicans, have all too successfully communicated or messaged is that health care for us is a means, not an end in itself. We're not comfortable talking about the issue. We don't have strong affirmative plans. We have a lot of talking points. I think we need to be back on that message, and we cannot allow it to be the case that Democrats are the party of health care and Republicans are the party that wants to use unhappiness about health care to win votes. This is such an enormous thing that has happened. I think in many ways a negative thing. We need to be focused on that and not on the political game.
Matthew,
because this is the most important piece of social legislation since the 60s.
Matthew, give me 15 seconds on Sarah Palin.
Well, I think Sarah Palin, she's definitely polarizing, but the thing about Sarah Palin is nearly 70% of Republicans like her. So when she goes to a place like Arizona to help John McCain in the Republican primary, it's a benefit for him. It may not help him in the general election. It's going to help him in the primary.
Okay, Matthew Dowd, David Frum, thanks very much for your time this morning.
Thank you.